this lesson, we'll look at the Android developer's website. It's an important tool, and Google has recently made significant improvements in its content and organization. It's also very dynamic. Google is constantly adding new components. So let's take a look. Now, this is the home page. You can get to it via the domain name developer.android.com or via the android.com website, which I'll bring up now. There's a link at the bottom of the home page to the developer's site. So clicking on that takes us to where we were. The website's divided into three major areas: design, develop, and distribute. The design area focuses on the user interface. This area is also referred to as the Android Design Guide. There's a lesson coming up on the Design Guide, so we'll leave a discussion of this part of the website for that lesson. Let's skip over for the moment to the distribute area. Now, this section focuses on how to publish your app to the Google Play Store and promote it to boost downloads and sales. There's a lesson coming up on distribution, so we'll leave this section until then. In this lesson, we'll focus on the develop section, which has 4 subsections: training, API guides, reference, and tools. Training provides instructions on how to use key elements of the Android system. Let me show you a typical example. Within Getting Started, we'll pick Building a Dynamic UI with Fragments, and let's pick Creating a Fragment. Lessons provide a summary of what the lesson teaches you, references to other lessons, and links to samples if they're included in the lesson. It includes text descriptions of concepts and technology, examples of Java code needed to achieve the target goal of the lesson, and examples of any XML that's also needed. At this point, you're probably thinking, wow, with all of these lessons on the Android site, why do I need a course from Infinite Skills? It's a good question, and here's the answer, which has multiple parts. First, as you'll see after you've scanned through the Android website, the amount of information is truly overwhelming. One aspect of this course is that it will help you make sense of the Android site, including the developer site, and guide you through it. Second, this course will build on the Android site. We think the Android site is a great resource for developers, and we're not going to ignore it or try to duplicate it. We'll be referencing the Android site in our lessons. We think it's great that Google is constantly working to expand and improve the Android site. Third, we'll provide sample apps to complement those already available from the Android site. Google hasn't yet covered all the bases with examples. Fourth, different people learn using different senses. Some like to read, others like images and graphics, still others like to listen, and so on. This course uses multimedia to leverage as many of those senses as possible. Fifth, this course isn't a substitute for the Android website. Even after you've finished this course and started developing your own apps, you'll continue using the Android site constantly for reference. One of the objectives of this course is to make you as comfortable and familiar as possible with the Android website. Now let's take a look at the API guides. The API guides, or Application Programming Interface Guides, describe the functional building blocks for Android. It's these elements that the course is built around. I like the graphic Google has used here, showing various elements falling into place. When you're designing and building apps, it's these elements you'll be thinking about and using to construct your apps. Let's look at an example of an API guide description. Some of them are listed within a hierarchy. So let's click on User Interface, Input Controls, and Buttons. The document contains a summary of links to document sections within this document. Click on that, you're taken further down in the page. Key classes with links to their descriptions. If you click on Button, it takes you to a description of the button class, and we'll be looking at these class descriptions in a moment. So let's go back. The API guides contain text descriptions, XML code examples, and Java code examples. Now let's look at the reference section. The reference section describes the nitty-gritty detail of Android functionality. As an example, I'll click on the Android animation package of classes, and within that the animator class. and we'll just scan down the page to see what it includes. It includes references to subclasses, a class overview, a summary of nested classes including interfaces, public constructors, methods, and then details about constructors and methods. These descriptions don't tell you all the details of how a function is performed, but provide extreme detail on everything you need to know to use that function. One of the properties of object-oriented programming is encapsulation, where the code using a class and its methods is shielded from concerns of how the end result is accomplished. More about this later in our lessons on the Java programming language. Notice over on the left here is this drop-down for API levels. As you click on these levels, you'll notice packages and classes dropping out. So, for example, this Android animation package wasn't available in API level 6. The API levels relate to Android releases. To see these relationships, click on API Guides, then come down here to the Android Manifest, scroll down to Uses SDK, and toward the bottom of this page, you see a list of the API levels and how they relate to platform versions and the version code names. The Tools section describes the tools you need to set up, develop, and debug your Android apps. I discuss a number of these in detail in other lessons, so we won't dwell on them here. So there you have it, a quick look at the Android developer's website. Before you go on to the next lesson, I recommend that you stop here and take a few minutes to scan through the website on your own. Click around a bit to get an additional feel for what's there. And remember, we'll be coming back to the Android site frequently during this course.